Hello everybody, this is TipTopMTG here today with another Magic the Gathering video. In today's video, we are looking at Commander 2021 or Strixhaven Commander and talking about the top 10 most expensive new cards. So yeah, it's pretty simple. We're going to be looking at the top 10 most expensive cards that are brand new with Commander 2021. I'm going to tell you why they are so expensive, what makes them good, what I'm excited to see them be played in, and all of that. So before we jump into this, I have a couple things I have to mention. First off, these are all pre-order prices. This is being filmed before the product is actually released, meaning that once it's released, the prices are likely to go down if the card either doesn't see play, or if it just sees the amount of play as expected, because the pre-orders are generally more expensive, or a card price could go up if someone finds something really powerful with that card. So keep that in mind. Another thing to mention, these are all Card Kingdom's prices, meaning that if you want to buy these, you can probably find them for cheaper elsewhere. I just like to have a nice baseline for all the prices. And then on top of that, this is all in USD, so if you are in another currency, convert accordingly. So let's just jump right into this. At number 10, we have Ink Shield. It's a 5-cost white and black instant, and it says, prevent all combat damage that would be dealt to you this turn. For each 1 damage prevented this way, create a 2/1 white and black Inkling creature token with flying. So essentially what's happening here is that you say, hey, I'm not going to take any damage, and then I'm also going to get a bunch of creatures. And why is that scary? Well, because now you're going to use those creatures on the crackback. They're thinking, okay, I can hit you for 22 and you can crack back for 5, meaning like swing back at them for 5. But really, they swing at you for 22, you then swing back for 44. This card is honestly one of the most insane ones I've seen in a while, and it wouldn't surprise me if it becomes a staple in this 2-color combination. I think it could get to the point where if they have a white and a black held up in a non-CEDH environment, this could be a really serious card that could be played. It not only saves you, but it also then says, hey, if you were greedy and overswung, you're gonna die too. So I think that it is a very powerful card, and I would not be surprised in the slightest if it goes up in price. Of course, having 5 mana open is a lot, and so that does kind of weigh it down, but I think that just the potential of this is so good. It's arguably better than something like Settle the Wreckage, which is mono white and only costs 4, and it just exiles attacking creatures. Yes, this doesn't deal with the creatures that swung, but oftentimes, I mean, you're gonna be using this in a situation where you're gonna die, and so I feel like this can just do a lot of work. At number 9, we have Reinterpret. It's a 4-cost blue and red instant, and it says, counter target spell. You may cast a spell with an equal or lesser mana value from your hand without paying its mana cost, and it's a $7 card. This one's really good as well. It is on the bit of an expensive side for a counterspell, as well as being in 2 colors. However, it reminds me a lot of a mana drain, where you're exiling your opponent's spell, and the bigger the spell you exile, the more the effect you get. Me personally, I like those, and I dislike them. I like them because it often feels like you're getting a lot of value for your counterspells and not just being mean. But on top of that, sometimes I feel like I'm not forced, but encouraged to counter something I normally wouldn't, just because I can get a really big effect off of it. And that's fine, but then you kind of have to look at it not so much as a counterspell and more as a value card. So, and I know that is kind of ridiculous to say, you know, that I'm not trying to say that's a bad part of the card. I'm just saying that sometimes that can happen and it feels a little less counterspelly and more value-based, which is good, I mean, in a way, because it means that this thing is very versatile. Generally, I would say it's a pretty good card that can do a lot of work. It also feels very commandery to me. It's like, oh, I'm gonna slow you down a little bit and then get some really ridiculously big thing on the board because that's what you were about to do too. It seems very fair because whatever you're doing, it's kind of equal to what your opponents are doing because they are the ones who kind of cast the first big spell. Next we have Tempting Contract. It's a 4-cost artifact, and it says, at the beginning of your upkeep, each opponent may create a treasure token. For each opponent who does, you create a treasure token. So theoretically, at its like most treasure token pumping potential in a 4-player commander game, each opponent is creating 1 and you're creating 3, and ramping 3 every turn is really crazy. Honestly, this seems like a really good card, and it's in colorless, meaning every color gets access to it. The one big downside to this is if this card does ever become like really good, like think Rhystic Study. I know there are lots of players who when Rhystic Study comes down, they treat it as cards cost 1 more to cast. And that happens. People will do that. And so I can see this is a lot easier to say, hey, we're just not going to take it. Literally, it says at the beginning of your upkeep, each opponent may create a treasure. If everyone just says no, that's pretty devastating to the person who plays this. So losing a card, they're losing mana, they're probably lost a turn that they played it. So I think that you would need to be in a kind, not greedy, but in a non-working together group. Like, this card deactivates the second you get ahead of the table significantly. So keep that in mind. And then also, it's a lot easier than something like Smothering Tide, the Rhystic Study, to quote-unquote always pay the cost. Because this is very similar to Rhystic Study, where whenever you cast a spell, you may pay 1. If you don't, the Rhystic Study's owner draws a card, or controller. And this feels very, very similar to that, where it's like, oh yeah, you're tempting them, but they, it's all in their hands, really. And this one is extra in their hands because it's not about paying mana, it's about saying yes or no. So I could really see a lot of tables saying, hey, we're just never going to take this, and then you're kind of out of cards. So I could see that happening, but it really depends on the table. Next, we have Oversimplify. It's a 5-cost green and blue sorcery. Exile all creatures. Each player creates a 0/0 green and blue fractal creature token and puts a number of +1/+1 counters on it equal to the total power of creatures they controlled that were exiled this way. Alright, so yep, this is a exile all creatures board wipe, and yes, each person does get a token, but first off, blue is really, really good at dealing with tokens by bouncing them, and second, it's fine. It's a generic vanilla creature. So yeah, I actually think this is a really, really good card. Blue doesn't often get 5-cost exile all creatures. Now, of course, this does have green in it as well, so that does limit it in its usage, especially because green does get a couple of board wipes, and obviously blue does as well, but neither of them really get exiling all creatures, so very interesting to see. And number 6, going for $8, we have Guardian Augmenter. It's a 3-cost green creature troll wizard, 2/2 with flash, and it says commander creatures you control get +2/+2, and commanders you control have hexproof. So the idea here is that, you are boosting up your commander and giving it hexproof. You know what kind of deck loves that? One that's trying to put a bunch of equipment and auras on their commander to kill you with commander damage. So yes, this is definitely going in a Voltron style deck where you are trying to kill people with commander damage, but it's also just good in any deck where your commander is a high priority target. Think about things like Joda or, oh my gosh, I'm forgetting their name. I have a couple commanders that are like kill on sight, so then I have to throw in like hexproof effects, and this is just a really good one. And so I could see this price going up. Next, we have Essex Fractal Bloom. It's a 6-cost green and blue legendary creature fractal, 4/4 with flying, and it says the first time you would create 1 or more tokens during each of your turns, you may instead choose a creature other than Essex and carry that many copies, or that many tokens that are copies of that creature. So if you make 3 1/1s, you can have them actually enter as 3 copies of some creature that is an Essex. So that's pretty powerful, a lot more interesting than the face commander of the set, or more specifically of the Quandrix deck. And yeah, pretty good card that I think is very commandery in nature, and that's generally going to do better. Next, we have Cursed Mirror. It's a 3-cost red artifact. Tap, add red. As it enters the battlefield, you may have it become a copy of any creature on the battlefield until end of turn, except it has haste. So, very powerful. It's a mana rock that is also going to take the biggest creature on the battlefield and kind of swing it at an opponent for 1 turn. I think this is really interesting. In the beginning, it can literally just be a mana rock, and if you pull it late game, it can become one of the big threats on the board and really change the tide of the game. It's good beginning game, it's good end game, and I think that makes it a really good card. Next, we have Cunning Rhetoric. It's a 3-cost black enchantment. Whenever an opponent attacks you and or 1 or more planeswalkers you control, exile the top card of that player's library. You may play that card as long as it remains exiled, and you may spend mana as though it were mana of any color to cast. So whenever an opponent attacks you, you get to basically draw a card off their library. Pretty good, and it's going for $8. Very similarly to everything since, number 8. Number 8 through number 3 have all been $8. And a big part of that is that there are just a lot of good cards. This one is just a black enchantment that says whenever you get attacked, draw a card. Now, you are drawing it from your opponent's library, meaning it'll have slightly less synergy than stuff you're doing, but generally, that actually is often seen as a good thing because people love to play with each other's decks, or a lot of people like the idea of, oh, I'm stealing stuff from you. It just feels different, and so I know a lot of people prefer that. Obviously, I feel like just drawing the card would have been better, but obviously that's not what this does, and it would be a little busted if that was what it does. So yeah, very, very powerful card advantage, kind of not engine, but ability. It really only triggers once per turn, so you can't really say it's broken, but I think that it has a lot of potential and could be one of those cards that just goes in a lot of black decks. Next, we have Archeomancers Map. It's a 3-cost white enchantment, or artifact, sorry. And when it enters the battlefield, you may search your library for 2 basic planes and put them into your hand. And then whenever a land enters the battlefield under an opponent's control, if you have less lands than that opponent, then you can put a land from your hand onto the battlefield. So you're ramping with white, first off, you're tutoring for your lands, and then you are taking... Then you're taking lands from your hand and throwing them right on the battlefield whenever an opponent puts a land down, if they have more lands than you, which oftentimes there will be at least one green deck that's ramping a lot with lands. So pretty powerful card, and it's very clear because we had the price jump all the way up to $20. And then at number 1, we have Monologue Tax. It's a 3-cost white enchantment. Whenever an opponent casts their second spell each turn, you create a treasure token. So yeah, pretty powerful. It reminds me again of a Smothering Tithe effect where you are taxing your opponent, but instead of saying, no, you can't do it, you're saying, I'm going to get a benefit, which I think is a lot more fun and a lot more commander-y. I feel like people will look down on this card less than one that would say, whenever an opponent casts their second spell each turn, counter unless they pay 2. I feel like this card would be much more appreciated, and so I think that it is fun for Commander, powerful, and gives white a little bit of a boost that it may need, and clearly that is going to be the case. It's going for $21.99, so very, very powerful and expensive card. Remember, these are coming in pre-cons that are about $30, so I would not recommend paying $21.99 for this. Wait for the prices to fall. Either way, guys, that is going to do it for this video. If you enjoyed or found it useful, hit that like button, subscribe to stay up to date with everything Magic the Gathering, see more videos like this. This is going to be a pretty jam-packed week. I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.